All right, so CA finally admits what was wrong with Total War. This is Bellular News. Actually, why am I not subscribed to him? I should be. But all right, let's see what CA finally admits, because they've done a lot of stuff wrong the last couple of years. Like I was saying in my previous one, they've done a lot of stuff wrong over the last couple of years. So let's actually see what he says, what he figured out about this.
Well, today we got to reckon with the rebirth of historical Total War. I'll believe that when I see it, but what it is Creative Assembly's promise that they've made, as they've now celebrated the 25th anniversary of Total War. But
I thought the 25th anniversary showcase was kind of lacking a little bit, honestly. I was kind of hoping for more announcements and more hype around Total War. I watched it and I just kind of felt like there wasn't that much hype around Total War or what's coming out.
the thing is, there's currently no historical Total War game in sight, at least not for the short term. There is something fairly large for the long term, and something a lot more important. And also,
yeah, Medieval 3 is probably about a good, I'd say, 4 to 5 years away yet. I could be wrong about it, but the way it seemed like they addressed it at the showcase was that it was still a little while away yet. And it seems like Warhammer 40k will come before Medieval 3. But I could be wrong.
don't mind the funky hair. I just had a transplant around the crown, which does mean I've got this weird Peaky Blinders cut in and around the donor site. It'll be back to normal soon. Now, the big thing, the headline thing.
Your hair looks fine, dude. Your hair looks fine.
That Medieval 3 has been revealed. And that is genuinely huge, but it's also still a long, long way off. In the meantime, well, that's where things get serious. Creative Assembly are keeping Total War Warhammer going by pretty much any means necessary. They're essentially buying time, but they're buying time whilst they rebuild the foundations of the whole series.
Yeah, see, they released another DLC for Warhammer 3, and if I remember correctly, there are talks about releasing 1 or 2 more DLCs for Warhammer 3. Just to kind of try to buy more time.
Now, worst case, that's a whole bunch of marketing fluff. But given what we know, and what's even been leaked to us in this office, they really have needed to do that. That's what actually matters, because as of late, the technical state of Total War has been near enough an unrecoverable technical nightmare that has basically hounded them for years upon years upon years. So, we've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, they talked about their War Core engine and how they were redoing the War Core engine, or how they were making the War Core engine. How it's supposed to be better graphics, better fidelity, how more responsive, and a couple other things I don't remember that really were kind of important. But the War Core engine looks like it's shaping up to actually be a lot more interesting than the previous engine they were using.
About today. I've got to start with the lay of the land. So 2025 has not really been great for Creative Assembly. After years of layoffs, they finally found their financials were stabilizing, but they kind of didn't have anything new to offer, right? There were just 2 public updates.
Years of layoffs. Dude, it's been like a couple years they've been laying people off, and Sega had to come in and get back involved instead of kind of just keeping a hands-off approach. Like, it's not just last year, it's been the last couple years that Creative Assembly has been kind of faltering and going down with. I'd say they kind of started been going down with the release of Three Kingdoms, so it was slow at first, but Pharaoh, oh man, Pharaoh really drove them down into the ground. Like, as a historical title, I did not like Pharaoh's.
And then the newly released Tides of Torment, which, yeah, actually did somehow come out. To say the release cadence got behind schedule would be putting it lightly. Now, the first of those, Shadows of Change, it didn't really go down that well. It landed amongst a wave of patches that were basically trying to placate player complaints, but those patches ended up revealing kind of just how broken the game is in a real deep way. and that's something that's been going on and infuriating players over the last few months. And our most recent big update.
I mean, every Total War game is broken. It's just your decision if you want to exploit it or not. Some exploits in the game for it being broken are funny and hilarious. Others, like the original Rome Total War, where you can use the console commands to cheat, add money and all that stuff. One way or another, every Total War game is broken. It's just depending on how much is it broken, what is broken, and what is the outcome of it being broken.
With Total War was basically all that frustration boiling over. Essentially,
Yeah,
bugs reared their heads
it went
in the
negative.
context of a deep stagnancy, so the community felt pretty bad. But then hit the Black Friday sale over on Steam, alongside the newest patch and the newest DLC. And the good news is the recent Steam reviews have actually spiked back up to mostly positive. A very rare thing for this game. And the total reviews
they
are
changed
shifting up
it
as well. Only a percentage from positivity.
They were able to bring
So
Warhammer
there's a
3
bit of
back.
stabilization here. And that is what CA have desperately wanted and I guess needed. Because for them to have any credibility when they say, trust me bro, we're doing the foundations, well, they kinda need to look like they've not just cut and ran. That's been the news coming up to the showcase. So now,
But they did cut and run. They cut and ran with Pharaohs. After they released the dynasties for Pharaohs for everybody for free, they just cut that game. Like, there really hasn't been anything else for that game. There may have been a couple updates. I don't know. I stopped playing it. I really was not a fan of Pharaohs and how that came around. I went back to playing Three Kingdoms, to be honest, but they did cut and run. Their last title. With Pharaohs, they released Dynasties, and they gave up on it. And instead of trying to bring that back, and they just went and focused on Warhammer 3, which I do own, and I did give it a try. Again, not really a fan of it, but I may try it again just to see if I can kind of get into it.
now, let's talk about the big showcase. The event that kicked all this off was their showcase, and it was the culmination of months of them doing streams and retrospectives celebrating 25 years of Total War. And they really have done a lot of celebrating, or, hyping. And it's all basically led to this stream. And what
No, see, it really wasn't much hype around it. At least I didn't feel much hype around it. It just kind of, to me, just seemed more like, hey guys, this is kind of what we did. Now we know we're going to get into the part where we screwed up, and this is how we're fixing it, and we're bringing Total War back. Like, to me, it didn't really feel like there was much hype around it. It just kind of felt more like an apology. I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion.
we actually got in the stream was 30 minutes of Warhammer, 15 minutes of breaking down how the series' new engine will actually solve problems, and 15 minutes discussing a new game. Well, that game being Medieval 3, but you're not going to be playing it anytime soon. Let's do Warhammer.
Like I said, like 4 or 5 years in my opinion.
Predicted, Lords
at
of the
minimum.
End Times will be the new DLC. You'll be starting with Nagash, the Lord of Necromancers, and he'll have 3 other legendary lords, which will all be part of this paid DLC. Now, the base game is going to be updated with new endgame mechanics, which are all tied into the End Times narrative. A controversial chapter in Warhammer, but of course the one that is tied to, the Vermintide games. Now, gameplay-wise, it'll be making use of the Realm of Chaos battlefields, which, yes, well, we'll see how those end up playing out. Now, this is all still taking place in Immortal Empires, so the good news is they're not repeating the very silly Total War Warhammer 3 campaign problems. Basically,
didn't they release Immortal Empires for people who own Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2 that you can access the Immortal Empires in that now too? I'm pretty sure they did.
They know the thing that actually matters is the sandbox, so the end times will be integrated into the sandbox rather than being its own little gimmicky thing. So that's what's going on with Warhammer 3, and it's planned to launch in 2026. Then there's the big thing, that being Medieval 3. We don't have a date, and here's what they say about it.
This is more than just a new game. It's the rebirth of historical Total War.
That's their tagline. It certainly is music to my ears, but all we've really seen is a trailer that's basically just...
Yeah, it sounds good, the rebirth of historical Total War. That sounds great. But again, how many of us have turned around and put our trust in CA Again, with Three Kingdoms, I know that was a flop, even though I personally really enjoyed that game and I still play it every once in a while. But with Pharaohs and how they originally handled Warhammer 3 and with Three Kingdoms, the removal of blood and gore and put it in as a paid DLC. Like, there's so many things that CA has done over the last couple years that has really eroded the trust in the community. And like I said, to the point where Sega had to get back involved.
Tease the return of medieval stuff and historical Total War games. Now, the staff themselves say the game is in, quote, early pre-production, which essentially means a small enough number of probably quite veteran people are working on it, but likely nothing crazy in terms of resource allocation.
No, they're all working on Warhammer 40k right now, and as soon as that launches, it'll flip. They're turn around and they're put the mass amount of people on Medieval 3, and they'll have a small veteran team working on DLCs and stuff for 40k.
Yes, and got to imagine that's probably all going into the engine. Now, they did have plenty of nice sentiments, talking about going deeper into the historical aspect, deeper than they have before, actually offering people ways to engage with the world in more ways than just combat. Obviously, we can have a bit of a think about Paradox games there. But what is absolutely clear is that Medieval 3 actually won't be the next game that Creative Assembly releases, which would make you think the thing we'll be getting next won't be as grand and huge. But they're definitely not framing it that way. They've basically said that the next game they release will be, quote, one of the most ambitious projects in the franchise's history, marking the beginning of a brand new era. And basically, they're going to go and announce this at the Game Awards. Now, the assumption is that this new game will be...
Yeah, it's Warhammer 40k, and in my opinion, that'll be out either next year or 2027 at the latest. And we won't be getting Medieval 3 until 2028 or 2029.
The other big thing that they've talked about, because, well, this new Total War game probably would be like nothing that they've ever made before. Maybe so much that they basically need to rebuild their engine. Let's talk about the tech side, because they're basically teasing Total War players with the insane notion of a Total War game that I guess works as expected. Kind of crazy. Now, they've said that going forward, their new War Core engine will be the strongest foundation. And it basically seems, at least in terms of their public framing, that it's a direct response to all the criticisms that we've heard reported from insiders. Basically, that they were using tool sets that were insanely unwieldy. We've been told that ourselves. Basically, their tools were hard to develop with, and what would happen is individual teams would make improvements for whatever game they were doing. Sometimes those improvements would be folded back into the dough and used in the next game, but not always. So they basically ended up having loads of different forks of the engine. So
yeah, so basically, if you have the design team that improves the engine and they make something that could be used for the next one, and it doesn't get added to the engine, they now have to go back in the next game and redesign it, or just completely scrap it and design something new again. Same thing with the battles. This is why you kind of see a shift in like how the game works. Instead of having your core campaign elements, and I'm not talking about like building, recruiting, stuff like that. I'm talking about just your core campaign elements and having your core battle elements. You know, there's ones that'll always be there, you know, construction, recruiting armies, you know, how you control your units. I'm not talking about that basic, simple stuff. I'm talking about the actual core of it. That's why it feels different from game to game to game. Now, hopefully with this War Core engine, what they'll be able to do is keep the actual core in. So even if going from Warhammer 40k to where you're playing as the Militarium, and it feels like Total War, but then you switch and you play a massive campaign, this massive campaign as the Space Marines, and it feels totally different to play it, and it controls a completely different way than the core Total War factions. There should be at least similar stuff going from that game to Medieval 3 to whatever the next game is. Hopefully, next historical title, they kind of bring it up a little bit in the modern age. I'd love to see like a World War One title, but we'll just have to see how this war core engine works. Because I know as they said that as they go, they're going to keep developing it and bringing in stuff that works and making it a fundamental part of the engine. So we just have to see how it works.
Rather than being able to do really good software engineering, a lot of their technical staff were basically just firefighting all the time. So the overall idea with Warcore
Basically what I said.
Problems won't be a problem. Now, they say the engine is designed to be improvable over time, streamlining and improving things for their devs. And of course, if you're at CA and you think the reality maybe doesn't match, don't be afraid to tell us. A few of you have told us before, and certainly the players would want to know. I certainly hope that this is serious, though. I mean, for players at least, the intent here is the Total War games should actually match modern expectations.
Yes.
That meaning more fidelity, better visuals, better detail, but not at the cost of performance.
Unpopular opinion, I don't really care much about the graphics, the fidelity, stuff like that. I would play a game that looks like the original Rome Total War. As long as the core fundamentals are there, it's fun to play. It's responsive, The battles are fun, and there's just a lot of content to explore. But I know today's modern gamer really is into the fidelity, the graphics, stuff like that.
Performance obviously has been all over the place.
Yes, performance definitely needs to improve and standardize across the franchise.
That launch abomination of Rome 2 wasn't that fun. But speaking of fun, we all love a bit of dismemberment and gore whenever we come home from work.
The launch abomination of Rome 2, that lasted up until they released the first DLC. I'd say for those who are kind of new to the Total War franchise, if you want something that's similar to it, look at Pharaohs. The Abomination of Pharaohs. Such a terrible game.
And the good news is that's just all going to be baked in terms of the new fidelity options. There's not going to be any more blood DLC going on. There are other cool things as well. They're promising destructible environments. They showed a house being wrecked by incoming fire. And then that feeds into battle AI improvements, which hopefully will happen. If they meaningfully improve that battle AI, then
we need battle AI improvements. That's not something that could just hopefully happen. That's something that needs to happen. Because if you go back and you play some of the older games, it's the same things for the battles. Like take Three Kingdoms, for example. The army that you're facing, you have your army. The army that you're facing usually takes a defensive stance. You have to go up to them. You have to initiate the fight. Sometimes they do come to you and initiate the fight. It just kind of all depends. It seems more like if they think they have the advantage, they initiate. If they don't think they have the advantage, then you always have to initiate the fight. And it's kind of just like standing there in a line and fighting. And then they send their cavalry around to try to flank you. They have their archers sitting in the back firing. You do the same thing, and whoever kind of wins the cavalry engagement takes out the archers, and you send your heroes in to fight. So either you or the AI send their heroes in to fight, and it's kind of just the same repetitive routine. We need improvements to the battle AI. We need the computer to start doing more. Use different tactics. Do different things. I know, like in my campaign, what I've done, kind of to switch it up in my Three Kingdoms campaign, is I'd send a couple units of soldiers up. I'd have them engage, and then I'd fall back and have them feign a retreat. And then I'd have my army hit them. Like they'd be hiding in the woods or something, and I'd have them just swarm in and attack, just to do something different. Because the same repetitive routine of move your army forward, fight in a line, cavalry engage, swing around behind, grab their archers, send my heroes in to fight their heroes, it just gets repetitive after a while.
Then, honestly, we could be in a way better place for this series of because I think ultimately the biggest stagnation has just been in the core gameplay. Warner has
Yes.
done an amazing job of adding
Yes.
neat new mechanics and twists on top of a fundamentally out-of-date thing. So I'm at least excited at the prospect of them getting proper engineering time to get this right.
Yes.
Now, there's then campaign AI. It's always a bit of a bugbear.
I could not agree 100% more with Bellular right now. The problem is in the core fundamentals. Switch to core fundamentals. Make it more enjoyable. Improve everything after you get the basic core fundamentals correct.
And the promise they have is, quote, future modeling. So effectively, the AI is predicting actions that you will take based on current conditions and acting accordingly. And they've also teased improvements for vehicles and strafing, which maybe will be relevant in the upcoming game that we'll talk about soon. But there is another thing that this new engine will allow for, and that is console releases. Because playing a Total War game with a gamepad sounds amazing and fun. Bit weird, but
I disagree on that. I don't think playing Total War with an actual gamepad sounds fun. Because if you think about it, once you start getting higher up into Total War campaigns and you have multiple different things going on in a battle, you have elite units fighting elite units. In the beginning, it's more just kind of send your army forward, watch over them, move a couple units around. But as you get more and more and more into the campaign and you're fighting better and stronger units, you need to do a lot more micromanaging. And I know sometimes I get overwhelmed with that myself and I have to pause it and I have to kind of just take a moment and figure out what's going on. I think doing that with the keypad is going to be a little hard. Maybe it's possible, but again, I've been playing Total War for years on PC now.
I can see them doing it. And I guess, much like, say, Football Manager and Sega's Japanese franchises, they do just want to be able to sell everything everywhere, obviously. Now, Creative Assembly promised this is in addition to PC releases, but it will depend heavily on the support that they get for porting. They've clearly seen some fairly good returns in Feral Interactive. Basically, Feral Interactive did the mobile ports and the Mac ports. Now, I still cannot understand playing, say, Medieval 2 Total War on a phone screen, but those phone ports are actually getting new DLCs. So I guess some people are actually playing them. I tried and just found the control.
Oh, they're quite popular for people who play on the go. I'm actually thinking about getting either Empire or Medieval 2 on my phone so I can just kind of play it.
To be completely impossible. Now, all of this stuff with their next game and Medieval 3 is quite far away in the future. It's the sort of thing that'll be handled by the core Creative Assembly studio. You may be wondering then, what about Creative Assembly Sophia? Well, they're just going to have to continue.
I forgot about
Sophia on their back for a little bit longer, and that's because Total War Warhammer is not just a game. No, it is a platform, and despite the end times being the literal send-off for the entire Warhammer Fantasy Battle tabletop game, the press releases are actually quite explicit, where they say there will be more DLC for Total War Warhammer, and you'll note there, they don't say Warhammer 3. No, this is DLC for the actual game, which is Immortal Empires, and that's something that you can now access if you've got the first two games, or even if you just go and buy the Lords of the End Times DLC, which I guess means that'll kind of function as an expandalone thing. But basically, with all of this happening, the pool of potential DLC sales, well, it will just quite skyrocket. All this should mean good things for the bottom line, because people can just go and buy the brand new DLC that'll get them into Immortal Empires, where they can then buy 85 trillion other DLCs, which hopefully will make the line go up, which
pretty much
is just kind of what this company has needed for a long-ass time. So, CA Sophia will do that. They'll keep the numbers alive until something new happens. And of course, that new thing is not going to be medieval. There's going to be something coming first. Now,
Warhammer 40k.
What the next game is,
we already went over
what
this.
People care about is medieval, and where it gets interesting is I think they're trying to solve one of their big old problems, which is just that the line didn't. What do I mean when I say the line didn't go up? Well, a lot of the rot that set in with this company.
They didn't earn a lot of revenue and they had to make cuts to try to balance their financials because they messed up. Huge.
company is they basically realized a long ass time ago that they were struggling to expand their overall audience. So because of that, they kind of pivoted towards just doing yearly releases, which, you know, didn't really end up great.
Nah,
Now, one of the
not at
things
all.
that could expand their audience again for historical games is basically, you know, taking a look at Paradox, seeing what they're doing. So let's talk about that. Europa Universalis 5 was...
Please tell me that Creative Assembly is not trying to be the new Paradox. I'm not a big fan of Paradox games. Granted, I haven't really tried it much, but again, I'm not really a huge fan of the Paradox games. Please tell me Creative Assembly is sticking to the Total War formula and not trying to be Paradox.
A particularly, maybe peculiarly, stable and well-regarded launch for Paradox, and that was at least in part because of how it was communicated to players. And I think what we're seeing is Creative Assembly actually copying that approach. So let me explain. Project
Please
Sigil was
don't.
announced in 2024 after 4 years of prototyping and testing, all under the guise of development blogs from Paradox Tinto. Now, those then continued through the full reveal and right up to the launch, basically all designed around getting feedback from players on loads of different aspects. It was effectively an early access where players just got to see one feature at a time and then comment on it, which seems to have actually worked. I'm maybe thinking of another big grand strategy game, Civilization, that probably could have done a bit more of that. But anyway,
yeah.
Creative Assembly talked about Medieval 3.
Civilization, I feel like, is kind of like the introductory kid game to this sort, whereas Total War from Creative Assembly is kind of like the older brother, where, you know, you have a little bit more complex systems up here. You know, the battling's a little bit more, you gotta kind of micromanage it, but it's still kind of easy. And then Paradox with their games, I feel, are like just like all the way up here. Like, here's the game. We're not going to tell you a damn thing about it. Figure it out. If you can't figure it out, sucks to be you.
It was all in the context of a very similar pitch to what Paradox made to their people. The direct quote is, "We're in early pre-production of Medieval 3 and we're announcing early to take you on our development journey with us where we can via blogs and other updates. We've never announced something this early before and we're excited to engage with you throughout this journey." Now, that can just seem like a bit of corpo speak, but I do actually think it matters here. And that's because the last
It does matter.
very much suffered from not
Yes.
meeting player expectations.
Yes.
Pharaoh was disappointing because of how thin it seemed in terms of content whilst it was
See, even Bellular agrees with me. Pharaoh's was atrocious. Terrible game. Terrible.
being framed as a full, fat, real historical Total War game, and not a smaller Sagas game. And then there was the campaign of Total War Warhammer 3. It was not great. It was a lot worse than the rest of the game.
Yep.
So that basically meant that in both of those games, they had a lot of firefighting in day one. And you could argue a lot of that firefighting was stuff that, well, players probably could have just told you about, like, years before, had they have known whenever some of those core decisions were being locked in. And of course, across the franchise, just about every Total War ends up reworking systems, factions, units, and stuff after launch. So, doing that before launch, actually getting some buy-in from players ahead of time, that's hopefully going to keep historical players happy. I mean, I'm one of those players, and I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I fucking love historical Total War games.
That rings very differently to the hype campaign
and gaming
of Rome 2, which I think we all remember, and to be honest, did just irrevocably change my relationship with that company and the fundamental level of trust I could ever have with them again. So them doing that.
See, Rome 2 I enjoyed. The vanilla campaign for Rome 2 was, like, launch campaign, terrible, terrible, terrible. I will admit it 100%. But after they kind of reworked Rome 2 and started redoing or releasing the DLCs and stuff, Rome 2 I still play to this day. Such a phenomenal Total War game. I absolutely love it.
This seems at least like a bit of a move to get that trust back. I think this feels even more important when you consider why Medieval 3 was revealed now, despite it not releasing for years. So, the other game then, it's going to be revealed December 11th, and it's probably not a historical title, or at least it's not a follow-up to anything Creative Assembly.
It's Warhammer 40k, brand new.
It is something that Sega are banking on to sell. I mean, the whole showcase is basically part of Sega's plan for a, quote,
Warhammer 40k will basically set the precedence for future fantasy Total War titles. If 40k flops, I've said it before and I'll say it again. If 40k flops, there will be a very hard time for CA, whether the main studio, Sephora, whatever, Saphira, however the hell you pronounce it, to make a different fantasy game outside of just Total War Warhammer. There's a lot riding on Warhammer 40k.
Turnaround of the Total War brand. Now, there's talk of several things. There's the obvious Warhammer 40k
See,
game.
I want a Star Wars game.
Title, and in recent weeks, some people have even suggested a Total War Lego game, which, to be honest, seems insane to me.
I think that's a stupid idea.
I could actually see that being fun. Still, I think that would be fit for a spin-off, not a big main title. But where you can put puzzle pieces together is that at least two of
the Total War Lego, I think it's a stupid idea. If they do it, they should make it like a Thrones of Britannia or something, like a smaller game where there's no actual like tie in to either the fantasy or the historical from the main studio. So I don't know. I don't agree with the Lego, but the Star Wars one, yes, we need Star Wars.
of those game concepts
Just like-
would be better supported.
Just like we need a Lord of the Rings one. With the Lord of the Rings, you could do so many things. You can make it in so many different ways. I can make a whole video talking about my idea for a Total War Lord of the Rings game. So many phenomenal ideas you could do with that.
By their new engine handling vehicles and strafing. Both the 40k and Star Wars would need that kind of thing. As would, say, World War I or World War II, which would be pretty dope, but I don't really think that's what they'll be doing. And it's actually right here that I recognize I'm being pandered to, in a very Todd Howard way. By which I mean, as a historical Total War fan, if the next thing was Warhammer 40k, or it was Star Wars, and that was all it was talked about, I would probably lose my mind and become a little bit depressed.
I
What I
wouldn't.
care about the most is, obviously, historical Total War.
See, as a personally, as a lover of the historical titles, I'm excited for the 40k. I think that's going to be an interesting, fun game. I am also, I would be, as a huge Star Wars nerd, I would be excited for a Star Wars one. I wouldn't be too upset.
Now, what they're doing here almost reminds me, though I don't want the negative connotations of it, but it almost reminds me of the wild move of announcing the next Elder Scrolls game to soften the blow of the Elder Scrolls Blades, a mobile game that by now I think almost everyone has forgotten. Just that in this case, they know people...
I didn't even know they made a
pretty
mobile
annoying
Elder
and
Scrolls
like a lot of
game.
detail when it comes to the historical games, so they've obviously done it like this, all in a way that's involved new promises like the engine, the player involvement, solving long-standing issues, making us think a bit more about the politics and the historical simulation side, to basically just kind of make us think, all right, well, that's clearly your long-term play. In the near term, yeah, you've probably just juiced up your combat stuff so you can do a 40k or a Star War. I think that's basically their plan. It does mean Medieval 3 will be a long-ass time away, and the near future does seem to be a bit more fantastical. But not nearly as fantastical as $100 games. It seems that a lot of that scuttlebutt didn't really go anywhere, and, well, we've got some fun data about game prices actually going down in Steam. And if you want to learn all
Thank
about that, just
God.
check the video on
Thank God game prices are going down. $100 for games would be ridiculous. That'll be for a different video. I'll watch that then. That'll be for a different video. Well, what was he saying about... Let me go back. I forgot what he was saying.
that a lot of that scuttle. But not nearly as fun time away. 40K or a Star War. I think that's basically their plan. It does mean Medieval 3 will be a long ass time away, and the near future does seem to be a bit more fantastical. But on
I personally, I think Medieval 3 is a little while away. I'm thinking that's going to be probably at minimum a 27, 28 release. I know I said 28, 29 before, but if they release 40K next year, then I could see them releasing Medieval 3 no later than 28. If 40K is a 27 release, which it is possible, it could be, then I would say probably about a 29 release for Medieval 3. I'm thinking it's a little while away yet. At minimum, probably at least 2 years, if not more, or if not longer. But we'll just have to wait and see. We know it's in early production or early development, but that could mean it could be out in a year and a half. It could mean it could be out in 4 years. I don't know. I'm not a game developer. But let me know what you guys think about this video. Let me know if you agree with my opinions and my assessments.